How you doing?
I'm fine.
You good?
This was a nice little experiment. It makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
It makes sense what we did.
I've only been suggesting it forever.
When have you ever brought this
I've
up?
suggested that we can record segments outside of how... For those that don't know, most of the time, like 99.9% of the time, when we record a podcast, we record it in sequential order. If it's a 3-hour podcast, we sit down for 3 hours.
100% of the time until now.
Yeah. And I've just brought up like, oh, well, we can do like 2 segments tonight and then 1 segment tomorrow.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that we recorded something specifically because we knew that we would get tired of podcasting. But now the way that we've recorded it, we recorded the last segment first. That way it doesn't sound tired. Yeah. So if we sound tired at all, it's only going to be the middle of the podcast. And then we'll pick right back up when we talk about Stranger Things.
The energy level will be lifted dramatically. Yeah. Criticisms for that podcast that we just did, or the segment that we just did.
Yeah, it's going to be a separate podcast as well as an attachment to what we're doing.
Yeah. We pre-recorded the Stranger Things segment, essentially.
I think they got it.
Yeah. Criticisms, definitely should have hooked up my my audio board.
Why?
So that Kayla could have had a microphone.
I don't think she wanted
it. She definitely did. She definitely did.
I know, I'm joking because she was waving her hand at you.
And I think, we've tried this experiment multiple times, and I think at times it's worked out fine for us. But I've got it. I've got the equipment. I should use it.
Yeah. I think specifically, though, about that scenario, I think you're being self-conscious about it. I thought it was great.
I hold
obviously
myself to a standard.
Well, no, I mean, there's no reason why I would ever argue having someone on a podcast and not needing a microphone. I'm just saying,
of course.
That conversation specifically, I'm just saying I think under those circumstances, it went very well.
Hashtag transparency. These are the things that I think about. I think I could have done this better. Could have done that better. This right here, I'm flourishing. Not this conversation specifically. I'm just giving an example. I'll listen to something and be like, I flourished here. Like that episode of After Smell we did.
We had a good week of podcasting.
Amazing.
We had a good week of podcasting.
Yeah, except we skipped Mr. Robot. You know what? I just don't care.
You don't care that we skipped it?
No.
I mean, look, for one, I'll take all of the blame.
We can do whatever we want.
That's true, but I will take all of the blame because my work schedule has been so shitty. I expected to be able to podcast about I've been able to podcast about pretty much every TV series that we've watched. Well, there's some Legion stuff I've missed. But overall, I've never had a legitimate reason why we would delay that kind of recap episode. But I don't know, whatever. I haven't heard a lot of people. I know that it gets listens, but I haven't heard a lot of people in our close community saying that they're relying on these shows. I don't think a lot of...
Ralph Lenardic, I think, is the only one.
Is he?
He listens, and there was one guy that commented that was like, "Ugh, no video this week. What a bummer." I was like,
reminds me of the days,
one guy.
Reminds me of the days when you were doing The Path, and
yes,
you did not ask all of these, but they got attached to you, and they weren't. I don't even think any of them were subscribers of the channel.
It was amazing.
I haven't seen any of them come back.
It was one of the most baffling things I've ever experienced.
They held you to that, man. They made sure that you put out a Path review. It's so much, in fact, that if they didn't exist, I don't think you would have felt the need to make that goodbye video.
Absolutely not. And that video is hilarious to me. It is so funny.
Like the existence of it or how you were on it? Or...
All of it. Just the fact that I had to address it. Because if nobody was commenting like that, I just wouldn't. I just would have just stopped. Like altogether.
Yeah.
Not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
But they would come back and be like, "Hey, you haven't uploaded a video yet." And I would be like, "It's been a day." Well, we have expectation. Okay, I get it.
Right.
No, it's all good. Listen, it's Halloween next week. Went to a Halloween party before this. It was interesting. Didn't know what to expect. Definitely 2 things. Definitely the oldest guy there. Definitely the tallest guy there.
So what?
I've been noticing these things lately. When I'm the tall guy at places. Weirds me out.
What's it like being my friend then? I'm like a foot shorter than you.
Well, you're just shorter than me.
Okay.
But to be the tallest person in a room full of like 20, 30 people. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different.
Something I've never felt in my life.
Shout out to
unless I visit a daycare.
Fair enough.
Which I'm not gonna do.
Yeah, you have a restraining order. Can't be within
Jay, that's
30
not
feet.
funny.
Shout out to Cody Polson, that's a party I went to.
Is it Polson or Polson?
It's Polson.
It's spelled Polson. It's a valid question, I think. Don't make me feel dumb.
No, I'm not. I mean, who knows how words are formed?
Do you actually know, or are you still going with Polson?
I've only said it because Kayla's tattooed him multiple times.
Okay.
I'm friends with him, and
I
that's how
trust
she
that.
says it.
I trust that.
Yeah, that's the only thing. And
he's in our group, but he's also someone that's
he's a YouTuber. He follows Schmoes and Collider, but he's a massive fan of Red Letter Media.
Really?
More than that's his favorite.
Never. This isn't a joke. I haven't met anybody that is a massive fan of it.
That's how into the space he is. Big fan of Screen Junkies, and I would say Schmoes and Collider is actually the third in line. Yeah,
interesting.
Which is fascinating. He got to go.
Well, he's wrong.
He got to go to Star Wars Celebration and meet up with. He met Cobster. He said he met Mark Ellis and Christian. He also said he met Campia.
He met Daddy?
Yeah. Met John Campia too.
So what?
Got to hear his take on meeting all of them, which was fascinating.
What was that like? Give me a little bit.
He said that meeting John Campia was interesting because it felt more like a business type of thing, like almost like he was talking to somebody in the business, whereas meeting Mark and Christian,
they were just dudes,
just guys.
That's interesting.
Hanging out.
You think anybody like Kevin Marks, they're going to call us out for talking about the Schmoes on our podcast after the guidelines that we said in the Facebook group?
I don't know.
I don't think those apply to us.
You mean tattle?
We can do whatever we're allowed to talk about the Schmoes.
What's our show? I mean, it's like if we were going to do like an after party talking about our lives, like obviously that's a fact of our lives. And these are like mini after parties. Hey, side thing too, we forgot to bring this up. And I've actually meant to talk to you about this off air, but we've been talking about Patreon a little bit. We sort of had a conference call over Skype, and we started to put pen to paper and actually structure some of this stuff up, plan it out. We still have a little bit of massaging to do. I think we need to set like a list of things that we need to accomplish before we reveal it to the world. But how are you feeling about the Patreon stuff coming up?
Well, if it means we get a lot of money, Jay.
How dare you? That's not what it's about. Listen, here's legitimately what that meeting was about. Regardless of whatever you think about Patreon, and we've had our own, hesitance with Patreon, but that whole meeting was about what can we do and what can we provide value-wise and entertainment-wise to justify you guys doing that.
The real answer is I'm a little bit weirded out with crowdfunding in general because I had like a failure in that space. I had a project that I was working on, and
we'll probably do an announcement. And I think I'd love for you to go into that too, like super in depth
about what I did originally with Indiegogo and my movie project
and your apprehension to it and whatnot.
Yeah, so that I'm not opposed to the idea in general. I think crowdfunding is fascinating and interesting and new. It's something that we all had to kind of learn what it was, and I think there are probably still plenty of skeptics that don't even understand it. But I had done a round of raising money before, and the project failed miserably, and it just didn't get done. And so I was a little self-conscious of the appearance of that.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I don't know. It is a weird thing.
I get it.
It is a weird thing, but
fortunately enough, the thing with Patreon is there's no. I mean, there's goals, but it's not like you can't really fail at it.
The second part of the answer is that for some reason these people really want to help us out.
They care.
I mean, there was a long time ago. I made a post like, "Hey, what would you think if we did this?" And we got so much support, tremendous support from everybody, and that made me feel a little bit better. But as you said, I mean, we talked a lot about the value that we would give. And I think it wasn't until I was watching Gary Vee where I felt more comfortable about it, because I knew that was the angle that we had to play, is that we have to be giving back just as much. And I think that is something that we're constantly talking about. And I hope that our supporters feel that and know that when we do launch that page. So
I don't remember exactly what all went into it, and obviously we'll announce it and everything, but from what I remember, we did go above and beyond on it. There is more than enough stuff to justify somebody actually contributing as a patron to it. I've done a lot of research on Patreon stuff going into this. Obviously, we wouldn't just be like, hey, we have this thing. We didn't read anything about it. And I see a lot of people who I'm like, that's cool. A lot of people, the first go-to thing is like, oh, here's an extra feed with some more content.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than that.
Well, I think the other thing too, and I want our audience to hear me on this, is that, we do this podcast. We have a YouTube channel, but we're also consumers. I pay $11.99 for Netflix every month.
Is that after it went up?
No, I do the 4K option.
Okay.
I have the 4K, which is a little bit more. But and I love that. I love the value of that. But at the same, so if I was to expect $4.99 out of any of our, I would feel like we were robbing those people, because no way, we don't even come close to being half or a third of what Netflix is. It's like, I'm thankful if you think we're worthy of 99 cents.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel more comfortable
and there's an award for that.
I feel like I'm comfortable saying I have the value of a cheeseburger a month.
You go.
But
we can feed you, and
it would just be mind blowing if someone was like, well, I'll give them $2 a month or $3. It's just like, no, that's not what I expect. Because as a consumer myself, I wouldn't do that.
Right.
I listen to ESPN radio every day, and I expect it to be free. It's like, it's again, it's an incredible tool, but I mean, I hope that our future patrons understand that we're lucky to get anything.
And for those of you that don't want to contribute, that's completely fine too. All the content that you already get from us, you'll still be able to get.
Yeah,
and the beauty of it all is the fact that if you do decide to become a patron of this, you're essentially investing into more and better content, because that's all our goal is. Yeah, we would love to quit our jobs and be full-time podcasters, but it's simply so that we can provide more to you. I mean, provide more content, better content, video, and all that stuff, and all that Patreon stuff. Not only are you getting content, but you're contributing to it in the future as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's get into some music stuff. I think that'll be our shortest topic.
Okay.
Here this week. I dropped a bomb on you. Converge has a new album coming out. Not a huge fan of the name of the album. It's called The Dust in Us. Or the Dusk in Us. The Dusk in Us.
Oh, okay.
Regardless.
Tears for Fears.
Not a huge fan of the album name, but regardless, this is an interesting one where, in an odd way, this is probably more up your alley than if we talked about like Bon Iver or the XX or something like that. But it's also not really up your alley. And to discuss the context of this band and all of that is sort of odd. First of all I really need to say is the reason why I'm talking about this right now is, one, they're one of my favorite bands. I've made the joke that they're the Drake of heavy music for me. I just really, really anticipate their albums, but also because they are one of the most critically respected bands in aggressive music, and they have a career that spans 2 decades. I mean, these are guys approaching 50, still making, just the most abrasive music that you could possibly think of. I'm working on a More Than Music episode specifically centered around Converge and an interesting aspect of this band. All I will say is listen to this conversation. It'll be interesting, but this is definitely not a band for everybody. They're just a band to maybe at least have some context of.
So to every single word you just said, every bit of it, my response is, I don't know why.
Right.
So here's where I'm at. We even last week we talked about We Came as Romans, and I think when we run the risk.
Real quick, you don't know why. For instance, you don't know why they have a career that spans 20 years.
I don't know why,
or how they.
I don't know why
this
is your Drake. I don't know why they have a career that spans 20 years. I don't know why you felt the need to make a More Than Music about that. Everything you just said.
Well, the More Than Music. The More Than Music would inform you of what all of it is.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm not.
No. I'm just saying that's the interesting aspect.
I want to hear the whole episode.
Right.
So
how dare you? Just listen to the preview.
But I'm gonna end up having to listen to the whole episode, so I don't want to hear it twice.
Okay. I listened to your 1 minute Brave the Storm preview. From now on, I'm just gonna say
it's a whole lot. I mean, fair, but that's a whole.
From now on, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna wait until you release your greatest hits.
That'll never happen. But where was I going with that? Fuck. Okay, so it's the last week we talk about We Came as Romans, and I think whenever we talk about bands of the abrasive nature, we run the risk of alienating our audience. That's something that we respond to, but I don't know that a lot of our audience listens to that kind of thing, aside from Copster. So I don't think he's our audience.
I don't think he is either. Fair enough.
So the point is, we run the risk of. I'm actually this time probably gonna play the role of our audience member here because, look, here's what I'll say about Converge. I listened to the playlist you gave me. It was called Essential Converge.
7 tracks,
7 songs,
spanning pretty much the second half of their career.
You're telling me that this is the best of the best. I'm excited. I'm curious. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I think right from the get-go, I knew exactly what this was going to be.
Right.
But I wanted to reserve my judgment. I wanted to listen to all of it before I was able to come to this conclusion. And my opinion never wavered.
Right, of course.
So where I'm at here.
To be expected. This was never I was never thinking to myself, maybe I can get Ryan Snelling into this band.
So the people that think that you and I just love abrasive music, this is me saying this is not.
Right.
This right here is not for me.
This is to the extreme.
Do you remember what it was like in season 1 of Lost whenever you would have a scene from Jen's point of view and Jen would listen to people speaking in English, but it was complete gibberish?
Right.
Listening to Converge made me feel like average Joe listening to a band like Brave the Storm.
Right.
Where Brave the Storm, I could talk about the intricacies and how we're not nearly as heavy as some other bands that exist. And some people only hear it a certain way because screaming is on some, they automatically think it's heavy because I'm a screamer. And it's like, no, you try to explain to average Joe, there's a whole lot more to it than that. But all they hear is noise.
Right. And
that they don't like it. I hear this, someone who's familiar with heavy music, all I hear is noise. And all I know is I don't like it. I think that me hearing Converge is what I imagine it's like for people to hear any of this music in this genre. And then there are some particulars as well, like the fact that I don't respond to screamers who are just indistinguishable.
Unintelligible,
And but all of it though, all of it is just, how did this happen?
Right.
So when it blows my mind when you say this career, they span 20 years, it's one of the biggest bands. People
not one of the biggest.
Okay. Well, the fact that people you and Brandon Turner anticipate this the way that you do, it's because my impression is that this band is sort of an outlier. I think that you've moved beyond this sound in general. No,
not this specifically. And here's what I'll say about this. This is the music, and especially heavy and abrasive music. This is the aficionados band. Okay, these are the people who, for instance, not only am I a music guy, but I also make music. I was in a technical metalcore band that played in odd time signatures, even to the point of Converge, far more accessible than them, but it still had this chaotic sort of nature to it. Converge obviously has.
This was also 10-ish years ago. And that's
Right.
that's sort of where I was going, is that I thought you would
Right.
run beyond this.
So Converge has more in common with a band like The Chariot or Norma
Yes.
Jean than they do with a band like Under Oath or Brave the Storm. But even The Chariot, to me, to the aficionado's perspective, and I understand that this has a little bit of pretentiousness along with it, but that, whatever. A band like The Chariot compared to Converge is like, somebody riding around a big wheels, like a tricycle.
It's like saying J.J. Abrams has made a film.
Yeah. Well, and that's sort of how I was going to relate it to you. You can go to your Marvel films, which are your popcorn types of movies, but you could also go see a film like Blade Runner or a movie like Prisoners or something that is a lot more intricate. Or even, you can go even farther than that. I don't even know what it would be, like a Darren Aronofsky, like Mother or something. I don't know. But this is a band that if you are looking for the most aggression that you could possibly have, this is what it is. And to some people, hearing this music, you do just hear white noise. One of the things that I talk about in my More Than Music, there is abrasiveness, and there is just you can have abrasiveness by simply just turning something up in a recording as loud as it could possibly be to the point where it distorts and it's unlistenable. Then there is something called calculated abrasiveness, and that is the best form when so much is going on, but if you listen to it closely enough and you have a certain perspective and a certain point of view, you finally, that white noise starts to turn into something and you understand it. There was a moment when I was like you with this band, and one day it clicked with me. So that's sort of where that appreciation comes from.
Well, I think it's also telling that we are using words like aggressive and abrasive, and I don't think I've labeled them as heavy, but that's not the word I want to use, because it's not like this band is in the lowest tuning possible. It's not like they're doing a lot of low screams. I don't want to even use the word heavy, but something aggressive, abrasive, chaotic makes a whole lot more sense here. But
yeah. And the other thing to be said too, is this is a band where, we've talked a lot before. One of the issues that I have with bands like Converge, just heavier bands in general, is that their albums can be a little bit one note because it's just aggressive song after aggressive song after aggressive song, which is one of the reasons why I appreciated the Counterparts album this year. It was 11 songs. It was 20 minutes long. There are EPs that are longer than that, but it didn't overstay its welcome. It was straight to the point. I didn't have to spend an hour listening to the same note over and over and over again. Converge is a band that can make an hour-long album and be expansive.
Yes.
They have moments in their music that are more slow, that can get melodic and beautiful. The other thing, for a career that spanned 20 years, how in the hell do you come up with enough ideas to keep people interested?
Right.
They do this very smart thing where, for instance, on their album No Heroes, so there was this period in time when that chaotic, sort of noisy hardcore and metalcore was very big. Bands like Norma Jean, The Chariot were also another band that was very big. What other bands are sort of in that same vein? There was a lot of bands just incorporating like like feedback guitars.
I can't
and
think
whatnot.
of any right now, but yes.
Converge essentially said, okay, we're going to make that album and just essentially perfect that. They did an entire album where it was just those noisier songs.
Right.
Then they did on their album Axe to Fall was a very metal album. I mean, the song Dark Horse that was on your playlist is a super metal song.
I felt like I heard that before.
Yeah, I probably played it for you.
Yeah,
before.
but it felt like it was a part of something.
There's
else.
a Song Exploder episode from NPR did an episode on it, which is fascinating to listen to. To hear those vocals isolated is
That's weird.
Pretty awesome.
Because they're heavily distorted, right?
No, they are not.
That's how that guy sounds?
That's exactly how that guy sounds.
Like a cat hissing.
Yeah, his voice has also changed over the years from performing that way. Regardless,
probably because he's frying his throat.
Regardless, their most recent album, they have an album coming out, like I've already said, this week. This is essentially a preview for it, sort of. But their last album that came out, All We Love, We Leave Behind, was a very melodic album, like in the sense where they were just incorporating a lot of melody into that chaotic aspects. They're just a band that people appreciate. One of the reasons they're career has spanned as long as it has, and that's what I really, really dive into in this More Than Music episode, is because they have essentially laid the roadmap for what every single band that wants to be successful, make a career out of music, and have longevity, they've laid out the path to do that.
Right.
They're as abrasive as they are, and they have legitimately made a career out of doing it. From not only being in this band, but Jacob Bannon is also a very famous artist and a very famous graphic designer. He also owns his own record label. Kurt Ballou, the guitar player of this band, is a very famous record producer. I mean, just things like that. And that's what I explore on the episode. But I just really appreciate this band. Obviously, I like heavy and aggressive music. And as somebody that appreciates the intricacies and the fine details, that's sort of what I really bite on the most for it. But I completely get your point to not liking it, not enjoying it. But I do appreciate you for spending time with it.
And that's just, it's my honest take, but it's also like, I don't remember feeling this way. Like, if you want to go to another band like that you might call heavy, like a Mirror.
Yeah.
It's not a band I listen to, but it's a band that I laugh at. Like, there's usually some emotion or some like acceptance to it in some weird way, but it was very unusual for me to just hear something go, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, there's
very weird.
What is your take on a band like the Dillinger Escape Plan?
I know nothing about them.
Okay, see, that's another band.
I know that I've heard a couple of their songs, but if you played one for me, I would have no idea who that was. I just never listened to them.
That's another band that sort of falls under this similar category. Every Time I Die was another band that was sort of did that noisy thing too.
Yeah, but I never would have grouped them together. I never would have come up with that.
With Converge?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Every Time I Die, 100% were influenced heavily by Converge. In fact, Kurt Ballou did not their last album, but the album before this one. I don't remember what it's called. No, it's not X Lives.
The Bare Necessities.
Yeah, that's Ballou. He quit his job as a biochemical engineer to be in Converge full time.
I bet he was better at being a bio. Okay, that's not fair. Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, if you guys are interested, I did.
He was curing cancer.
I did post this playlist in the Facebook group if people want to check it out and listen to it, and if it's piqued your interest, and definitely, regardless of if you have checked it out, definitely listen to the More Than Music episode when it finally comes out. It should be out early next year, and I'm proud of the episode just because it's a good story, and the way it's edited together, I think people will at least have some sort of appreciation of that story.
Cody, put this on the poll at Sight Sound Pod. Would you be mad at a chemical engineer curing cancer if he decided to quit to write another record for your favorite band?
Well, I'll do that, but I'm too busy listening to My Mind. Where's My Mind? Oh, is this Cody Polson or is this Cody Ray Hecker?
Well, Polson.
Oh, okay.
Let's make that the official replacement of the Codys.
Yeah.
We moved on from Cody Hecker.
The Polson poll.
There you go.
There you go. All right, look. We're going to take one more quick break. Not one more quick break. It'll be the first break, but to us, it's another one. And then we're going to come back and talk Thor Ragnarok? Taika Waititi? All right, we'll be right back. The Sight and Sound YouTube page is the place to be. We always appreciate you checking out all the content we put out here on our podcast feed, but there is a ton of supplementary content in addition to what we talk about here. I'm over there doing album reviews for all the latest album releases. Ryan has you covered with movie news, reactions, and reviews. And from time to time, we even do television reactions in addition to original content that honestly is just meant to entertain you. Go to the description box of this podcast, click the link for the YouTube channel, and subscribe for even more Sight and Sound goodness. Good news, guys. Ryan Snelling has a Tinder match.
I just wish I could go without falling in love with all of them.
Oh, yeah? Does that happen? Is that before or after they stop talking to you?
She's a cutie.
That's good. Never known you to have a girlfriend.
Piano instructor. It's because none of them are good enough to keep my attention.
Taika Waititi.
I'm surprised that nobody called me. You remember that joke I made about having a shitty horse hobby? I'm surprised people didn't call me out on that. I was expecting like Christina to be like, I love horses.
I keep thinking Ilya is always going to call us out for our animal commentaries.
You should love these beautiful creatures.
Because he's a bird handler. But he's always been very respectful. Our opinions.
I'm a great impressionist, Jay. You know this of me. I do a great Stephen A. I've never been able to nail accents down, really.
Yeah.
I can't really hold a British accent or anything like that, but
it's a no long talk.
But Drake. I was like, what are you doing here?
That's his crappy British accent.
There's something about Chris Hemsworth saying Taika that really I enjoy very much. So Taika Waititi is the director of Thor Ragnarok. But I constantly just think of how Chris Hemsworth says it. Because I would really prefer that we all call it Taika. It's just it's such a crazy name, and he's such a crazy individual. I feel like saying Taika, it makes it that much crazier if you go Taika.
There's nothing worse than an American that's trying to assimilate an Australian accent. My best friend lived in Australia for a year and a half, and then when he came back, he had this. He was talking weird, and I was like, "Stop, stop doing that."
Was he doing it on purpose?
No, he legitimately wasn't. It was because he had been there for a year and a half, surrounded by all these people, and he had just picked up. He wasn't. I mean, he wasn't like, "Good night, mate." You know,
call Michael right now and ask him who the director of Thor Ragnarok is.
Driving.
I'd be
literally driving back to California from Kentucky right now.
Why are they driving?
They wanted to take a road trip. That's why they did this.
It's nighttime.
Well, you drive at night. I think they started.
That's not a road trip.
It's tomorrow. They're leaving tomorrow morning. Or this morning.
I would like to know. He lived in Australia. I would like to know how he would say Taika Waititi. I would love for him to, because I think we should all
say it normal.
We should all take up Taika. I like that.
At this point, I think he even thinks it's pretty lame.
What Taika was trying to do with this film.
Melbourne.
So let's preview Thor Ragnarok here.
Let's do it.
Because it's coming out later this week, November 3rd. What's the Rotten Tomato score? Cody,
better be higher than 89.
Is that where the gauge is this week?
It's more like 87.
Cody, pull up the Rotten Tomato score for me on Thor Ragnarok, please. Yes. What is it? 96%, Jay. 96.
That's not high enough for me.
The thing that I'm confused about is Taika, for the longest time, said that he liked the idea of this being a succinct film, that it was going to be 90 minutes, and that's about where they were in the editing bay. And
I had been purporting these claims.
It says 2 hours, 10 minutes.
I know. I had been telling everybody. Like,
it just went away.
The other day, somebody came up to me, and they were like, "Oh, are you going to see Thor? It looks pretty good." I was like, "Yeah, it does look really good." I was like, "There's some concerns about it being 90 minutes." And this guy goes, "It's 2 hours." I said, "No, it's not."
Yeah.
And then he proved me wrong, and I was like, "God damn it, Ryan. This is your fault."
No, it isn't.
I heard this information from you.
Taika said it in an interview. I heard it from him. He said, right now we're editing it, and it's going to clock in at 90 minutes. And people freaked out, like, what the fuck? And he's like, yeah, I mean, I kind of like the idea of it just being 90 minutes.
Maybe there's 30 minutes of post-credit.
They were editing it, and I don't know where this extra 40 minutes came from.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden it just went away. I haven't heard anyone publicly challenge that. Like the conversation we're having right now about where did that 90-minute runtime go? I haven't heard anybody talking about that. I think it's so strange. I don't care. I just think it's weird. But at the same time, I wasn't concerned that he couldn't pull off a 90-minute Marvel movie. I mean, whatever. There's bound to be one someday. But at the same time, I'm like, Thor Ragnarok is one thing, but the fact that you're kind of adding in Planet Hulk and doing all that kind of stuff, it's like, I mean, I think fans naturally expect a little bit more than 90 minutes. I mean, this is the
last Thor movie before. I mean, it essentially ties right into Infinity War too.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing that I think most fans want out of Marvel, or maybe movies in general. It's like if you have a movie that's based on existing source material and you combine them, it's like, well, did you really get enough?
Right.
Like,
it'll be the thirst. It'll be the first Thor movie I've ever seen.
Can you? World War Hulk is its own thing in the comic book, but it's like, is it worth doing it if you can only spend 15 minutes doing it in a movie? It's like, I would like to see the World War Hulk movie, not combining. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm saying that's just one. That's one school of thought.
You're especially bringing this up if the movie was going to be 90 minutes. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's one thing if it's 2 hours, and some people might already think that, but then again, it's one of those things where I think people are so shocked that they're actually going to get it, and they're so thankful in general. Like, wow, they are really going to give us some Planet Hulk stuff. I think for the most part, nobody is complaining about that, and I'm not either. I'm not. I think that's one way that anybody could approach it.
First of all, your hat laying on the ground there, it's going to be covered in dog hair.
It always is.
Just wanted to say, I'm very excited about this film. I think all of the trailers, they've hit it out of the park. I think all of the Thor related marketing material post Avengers Ultron has been great. All of the funny little things he was doing while Civil War was going on, I thought was great. And just the tone that it seems like Marvel has set with Thor and centered around Thor, the more comedic elements of him have just really, really worked. And they could have gone really wrong. We're hearing a lot of praise from this movie. Obviously, we just talked about the Rotten Tomatoes score. You know, Mark and Christian have seen it, and people over in Collider have seen it. They've given it a lot of praise. But above and beyond all of that, this movie just looks great. Like, it really, really does look great. I know you've had some issues sort of with the...
And I still have them.
Right.
But, I mean, going back to the point you made about, or you will make about Spider-Man Homecoming when we talk about Stranger Things, I think it kind of just has to do with the fact that, we see trailers on YouTube. We see things on TV spots. And I think that it'll make more sense with the context of having it being in the theater and the fact that everything will look the way that it does. I was concerned about the disconnect, but a lot of people are pointing out that it does look gorgeous. So I just need the context, and so I'm not freaking out about it. But that is something that I was curious about after seeing those trailers. It's just I didn't get how glossy it was, and I think there are shots where it's just so clear that they're standing in front of a
right.
So, but yeah,
I'm legitimately excited to see Hulk have as much screen time as it seems like we're going to have with him, simply because the only other instances that we've seen from him he's been divided amongst a more ensemble cast. And obviously this is an ensemble cast as well.
Right.
But he's essentially sharing top billing with Thor in this film. And obviously you throw in Loki as well. I'm excited about that because I love Mark Ruffalo's interpretation of Bruce Banner. I love the things that Marvel or the MCU are doing with Hulk as well.
Right.
It just seems like a movie we also kind of need right now, I think, in the MCU. Obviously, we're coming off of the more grounded version of Spider-Man Homecoming. We're about to go into this whole new world of
Spider-Man Homecoming might be I want to say it's the most grounded, but right now I'm kind of thinking about like Winter Soldier.
Right.
But it's extremely grounded.
At least in recent memory.
Right.
Like obviously it's the one that precedes this. And, you have Guardians of the Galaxy, which is probably more closely tied, especially in tone, closely tied with Thor. But it just seems like this is a film that we need. We're about to get into Black Panther, which just looks balls to the wall attitude. And then what seems to be some darkness on the horizon with Infinity War.
Yeah.
And I think this is just a really good time for this movie to exist. And it seems like it could also have a lot of crossover appeal to people who might not be in the MCU.
I think this movie's really interesting because the fact that I think Schnepp made the point that like Thor, it will be 3 movies, but it's not really a trilogy. Like, I don't think anybody thinks about the Thor trilogy because it's just not as lasting.
Right.
But I think it's fascinating when you look at the 3 films, how differently they all look, but it's by accident. It's not like the Russo brothers came in and were like, yeah, this will really... Right. It's just like just kind of been fixing mistakes in a way because, and I don't feel this way. I like the first Thor film, but like
Never seen it.
even Thor in general looks very different when you compare where he is now. Well, I'm not even talking about the crew cut Thor. I'm talking about what he looked like in Avengers and Thor: The Dark World and Age of Ultron, where he has very long, dark blonde hair. His eyebrows are Chris Hemsworth eyebrows. But when you look at him in Kenneth Branagh's Thor, his hair is short and like bleach blonde, and it looks his eyebrows are bleached, and it's like it's a very plastic looking Thor.
He's got that more standard Norse god look.
He looks unreal. And I didn't think anything of it until, Joss Whedon changed the look literally one film after, and it was a completely different looking character. And then, of course, we're going to get crew cut Thor in this film as well. But it's just so interesting how those films accidentally are completely different from each other. I'm certainly happy, especially if this is the best Thor film. I'm not going to complain about the quality of the film, but I think it's weird that we get something like this where Marvel is just so accepting of Taika and what his attitude towards the film and how he wants to change the look of Thor.
Seems like they've given him a lot of free reign on this thing.
It's so weird thinking back at what happened with Edgar Wright and Ant-Man.
Right.
I just think that's so strange how like James Gunn is able to take Guardians the way that he wants to take it, and like because Ant-Man, it's a funny movie and it's a comedy, but I think it's a more safer
absolutely
Marvel movie.
Yeah. It still is a Marvel movie.
Yeah. But
and I'm sure Thor Ragnarok is going to be as well.
My point, yeah. My point is that like people say that Marvel doesn't take chances, and that's why Edgar Wright can't exist. That's why particular directors like Tarantino just couldn't. But it's like, but then on the other hand, you have Taika Waititi making what could be the most interesting Marvel movie to date. It's like Marvel is weird in that way, and I haven't heard anybody talk about that either.
It is odd because we're sitting here in phase 3, I guess, of the Marvel films, and maybe it's because they've just been so successful that they can sort of be more trusting. But there is more of a precedent now of these directors having, or at least being able to put more of a stamp on their films. You mentioned James Gunn, obviously, the Russo brothers, what they've done with Winter Soldier and Civil War. You've got freaking Ryan Coogler coming up here with Black Panther, which also looks like things that we've never really seen before. But all still having the Kevin Feige, whatever spice added to it.
It's also weird that Peyton Reed is directing Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Yeah.
Like, the more I think about it, it's like, why wouldn't you try Edgar Wright again? Not that Edgar Wright would want to say yes. I mean, he might not want to say yes after the experience he had. But again, I think Ant-Man is safe as far as like, I don't know what's Peyton Reed's. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I look at Guardians of the Galaxy and I know what's James Gunn's.
Right.
Footprints or whatever you want to paw prints.
Paw prints.
It's a Rocket Record.
That's hilarious.
But it's like Peyton Reed might have an interesting take on Ant-Man and the Wasp, but it's like I find that so strange that we are going back and forth between what might be one of the most absurd.
Yeah.
And then next year we will have what could be just an interesting but more safe sequel. I just think that's kind of weird in that way.
It's also fascinating if you think about it, how little anybody is talking about the story or the narrative of this film. All people are talking about is the tone, the aesthetic,
and Valkyrie.
The visual. Absolutely.
They're leaving
the cast.
They're leaving a Planet Hulk movie and talking about Valkyrie, and Tessa Thompson apparently steals the show.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about having like an all-female Avengers with all this other cast of female heroes, and like apparently she's just transformative for this film. So that's another. And I love Tessa Thompson. I cannot wait to see. Hey, you should watch Creed. I cannot wait to see.
I've seen Westworld.
I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see it.
It's just fun. It's just funny to me and crazy to me. I am so critical sometimes of trailers. Obviously, I don't want trailers to spoil things for me.
They've all been fun.
I want trailers to at least give me, especially when Marvel movies. There are some Marvel movies that I could just take or leave and not see them. Like I haven't seen the first 2 Thor films. I still haven't seen Iron Man 3. Still haven't seen Captain America: The First Avenger. I don't know what the story is of this film, but yet I am still super excited to see it because I think now I'm more bought in to what Marvel is offering up to me than I ever have been. I mean, they're just sitting so high. You know, I think they're delivering their fans. Are they bringing in the audience that has been critical of them? I don't think so. I don't necessarily know if they need to do that. Do you think that this film can be appealing to anybody out there that's not already an MCU fan?
It's so hard to gauge because I mean everything about it tells you.
Have you had any of these conversations with people? Like trying I've had a few where I'm trying to pitch the comedy aspect to it. How funny it is.
That's strange because I think it's so in your face MCU because just seeing Hulk, but at the same time it's absurd because he's wearing a gladiator outfit. It's like everyone who knows about Marvel, whether you're a diehard or casual fan, will notice go see this film.
Yeah.
And then anyone else who doesn't even know that Marvel makes movies is going to look at it and be like, this is weird as shit.
Or that just doesn't care for quote unquote comic book movies in general.
Because you can kind of look at this and be like, is this a fucking superhero movie or is this science fiction or is this fantasy? Like it's really hard to or a comedy like
Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings sort of elements to it. It's interesting to me, and I think you're right. I think just seeing Thor, just seeing Hulk in this film is enough to sort of put people off.
Right.
But I find it hard to believe that if you're sitting in a movie theater waiting for whatever movie you're going to watch and you see this trailer come on and you start laughing, that you might not think to yourself, I might end up giving this a chance. And I think the comedy aspect is much easier for people to be that crossover factor as opposed to something like Ant-Man being a heist style film or Winter Soldier being a spy movie. Like, I don't know if you can really pick up, I'm sure people can pick up on those cues out of trailers, but it's more difficult, I think, for a casual moviegoer to be like, you know what, I'm sold on this spy movie.
Right.
But the comedy aspect of it, anybody can laugh at a dick joke.
Right. I think another thing that's fascinating with this film is that I think this movie might have the least amount of stakes to it.
Okay.
Because I think even though we want Cate Blanchett to be a great Hela, I think it's so easy to just already write off this villain.
Right.
Because, again, you're leaving the movie, people talking about Tessa Thompson. They're not talking about Hela. They're not talking about the villain. But at the same time, it's like we already have Infinity War in our consciousness. And it's like, in a way, not that we want it to be, but in a way, we just have to get past this movie. And then we get what's really coming. You know what I mean? There was a time when they announced Thor Ragnarok. I remember them announcing the title and the fact that the movie was coming. And I remember asking someone, hey, what is the storyline? What's it about? What does that mean? And the end of things to come is the translation.
Like an apocalypse.
I mean, there was a time when I thought this could be Thor's death.
Yeah.
And this could have Thanos in it. And this could go directly into Infinity War. And as time has gone on, you know, Black Panther's in between it, and we know that Thor is in Infinity War because of the trailer at Comic-Con. It's like, in a weird way, not that I want to discount the movie, but in a weird way, it ended up positioning itself based on the other films around it and where it's placed. It could just be a movie that we get out of the way.
You're speaking to its place in the greater MCU story arc.
Like, I feel it more than all of the
Actually,
others.
I'm glad you're bringing that up because what I will say, and I guess maybe minor spoiler alert for people that don't know about this, but the Infinity War trailer that they showed at Comic-Con begins with Thor hitting the window of the Guardians of the Galaxy ship.
The Milano, yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, having context to this is, how in the hell are we going to get First of all, surely we'd have to experience that, right? We would have to experience an event of him getting shot into space.
Right.
How in the hell? You know what I'm saying? Obviously, I need to see the movie.
But, not necessarily. Because the way he's introduced in the Avengers, he just comes out of nowhere. And we didn't have any... He conjured some black magic and just showed up on Earth.
I need to rewatch the Avengers films.
You won't.
I might. I own the first one.
Again, the only reason why I bring that up is because I think when we get a Marvel origin film, we know right away where its placement is. Like, we know, like, this is an origin story. It's not going to amount to
it's the first
everything else going on. Like with Ant-Man, we know it's his origin. It's going to be it's smaller. It doesn't really have much effect on everything else going on, whereas the third Captain America film changes the entire landscape for Infinity War. Our heroes are divided when our greatest threat comes to Earth and Thanos. It's like, that is very pivotal. But here we are with yet another pivotal end of a trilogy here, but at the same time, it has that feeling of it being like, this won't amount to everything else. Like that's what it feels like. And I think that's such a strange feeling. I'm throwing out a lot of thoughts here. I'm throwing out a lot of observations. I'm not making them concerns or criticisms.
Oh no.
I just think they're worthy to present because
it's part of the discussion.
Every time we bring up a Marvel film, every time one of these comes out, we can't help but talk about everything else that comes with that. And so all of those things just kind of come to mind, but none of that detracts from my excitement. The fact that I want this to be the best Thor movie. I love seeing Hulk, and I hope that we get an amazing film, and it looks like we do. So
yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to be probably in the theater to see this at one point or another. Let's just see if Kayla wants to see it. Let's ask her when we talk about Stranger Things.
You know what? Okay. Remind me, though, because I might forget.
Okay. Fair enough.
And but make sure you remind me. I know you have CTE.
I know.
So I'm going to ask the guy with CTE to remind me, a forgetful person as well.
My CTE sense is tingling right now. Might end up forgetting about it. I don't know. But you got anything else for this Thor Ragnarok discussion?
No.
All right.
I think, has Ralph seen it? Have some of these people seen it? I think that he has.
I don't know. I feel like Ralph gets those screeners. How the hell does he get those and we don't?
He doesn't get screeners. He goes to screenings.
How the hell does he get it and we don't? Christina goes to a lot of screenings.
Because he's in a more populated area with demand.
That's right. Does anybody go to screeners? Like, is there somebody that works for like our paper?
I don't think so. I think it's outsourced.
It's got to be.
Like State Journal probably uses like a
they can outsource it to us
or something like that.
And then we can drive to.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I'm not either. All right. Well, let's
take a break.
Quote unquote, take a break. And then we're going to get into our Stranger Things full season 2. I don't like calling it that. Our Stranger Things 2 full review, spoilers.
Yeah. We watched all of it. We're going to spoil the shit out of it. We're also going to put it up as a separate podcast for some peeps. But for those people who don't want to listen to the Converge Thor Ragnarok podcast, you'll have that there.
Yeah, well. And if maybe like you're listening to this on SK Plus, you'll get a taste of what a TV episode is like. And yeah, maybe you just weren't paying attention over the weekend and you didn't see it. And you can just listen to it now. All right, we'll be right back. Have you ever listened along with Sight and Sound and thought to yourself, man, I would love to have these types of conversations with other like-minded individuals? Well, there's a place for that. Head over to Facebook and be sure to join the Sight and Sound Facebook group. It was started by our listeners to share their thoughts and opinions, react and comment on episodes and topics brought up on episodes. You could even interact with Ryan and myself. It is a fantastic community that we are proud of, and we think you should join it. We've even made it easy for you. Check out the link in the description box of this podcast and get involved with the Sight and Sound Facebook group today. No one reins in Ryan Snelling.
As soon as I hit record, I gotta be the one to say something. Or Snelling's gonna sing off key.
No one puts baby in the corner. Do you know what movie that's from?
$1 Million Baby.
It's from a movie in the 80s.
Real Steel.
It's called. It's not Flashdance. It's
Real Steel. I'm connecting dots. Real Steel, directed by Sean Levy, who produces Stranger Things. Boom.
No one cares about that guy because this is an ensemble cast.
He's an insanely good-looking man,
Yeah.
Sean Levy.
Okay, I'll take your Eugene Levy.
Hollywood super producer Sean Levy.
Any relation to Eugene from American Pie?
I don't think so. He doesn't have the eyebrows that Eugene Levy has.
Fair enough. So we're here to talk Stranger Things season 2. Full spoilers.
Fuck yeah!
If you have not seen, if you've watched most of the show, you might be fine for a little while. But
don't trust us.
Just leave. Just leave. Just don't be here for this.
We've seen it all. We're talking about it all. You have been warned.
It's legitimately 1:30 a.m. on a I guess it's a Sunday morning, and we just finished the season. And look, we've talked about this show a lot.
It was our topic last week.
It was our
TV topic last week. But
have we done this before? Like doubled up back to back?
I don't think so. But it's actually a great point to start off with, because what this ended up being this year, and maybe it wasn't the case last year, but approaching Stranger Things season 2, this became event television in this way, and it's totally worthy of being talked about 2 consecutive weeks.
I think that's where we can start. So I think the interesting thing about Stranger Things season 1, I didn't get to experience this because I watched it way after the fact, was just the buzz of people discovering it, and then the water cooler talk. Hey, have you seen Stranger Things? Have you seen it? And then it became sort of a viral thing on social media, people talking about it. And obviously after the fact, all the stuff that going on in pop culture, you had Netflix literally parading these children around to award shows like they were floats in the Macy's Day Parade.
And how dare I do this? But at the time, I remember when the first trailer came out that summer, and I thought it was just, again, going to be like the OA. Netflix will have this little show in the corner.
Very niche.
And it appealed to me very much because I love coming of age. I love the nostalgia of the 80s, even though it's not nostalgia to me because I didn't live there. It's more of a fascination.
I used to live in the 80s.
Yeah, that's right. You did. I remember that. No, I didn't. No, I don't, because I wasn't in the 80s. So, but anyway, this was right up my alley. I'm a huge fan of Super 8, which is, it's, again, the same pocket. I just thought
derivative work.
I thought that this would be a show that would be cool for me to watch.
Right.
And then, next thing I know, everyone in the world has seen it, and it becomes and as you described it, it was, Millie Bobby Brown was at the Emmys and been nominated. I mean, it is probably the most popular television series next to Game of Thrones.
Right. For sure.
That's where I'm at with it right now.
I would definitely agree. It definitely has that buzz about it. So here's where I kind of want to start the conversation off with. Just binge television.
We should bring in Kayla.
We are, and that's what I want to do. I want to get your opinion first, and then I'll get hers. But binge television is this relatively newer concept in the last, half decade. And people binge shows in mass. There is this buzz, but there's not this type of buzz around a binge show. You have shows like Orange is the New Black, but I think a show like, at least to me, and it could just be because it's in my social media circles, a show like Stranger Things is as close to something like a Game of Thrones or Walking Dead that we have. And I'm fascinated by that. So my question to you, Ryan, we'll start with you, then we'll get Kayla's take here. What was your binge habit? Tell the audience, what was your binge habit of watching this show?
Of Stranger Things 2.
Absolutely.
So I was accidentally awake when it launched. We're on the east side of the United States, so when Netflix releases a show, it comes out on our 3 a.m., not our midnight. I don't think I've ever been awake to experience a show when it drops. I've always just, gone to sleep and waited till the next day. I was accidentally awake, and I ended up watching the premiere the minute it debuted. I saw the countdown and was able to hit play, and went to sleep after that. And then I watched 2 through 8. Where are we right now? We're Saturday night, Sunday morning. Yeah. So the past 24 hours is when I binged episode 2 through 8. And I didn't know that we were going to have watched the finale tonight. But again, it's been, 36 hours? And here we are. It's been 2 full days. It's 48 hours. Yeah, it's been 2 full days. Sunday morning. So yeah, here we are. And so it was binged relatively quickly. It was back to back. There were some things that got in the way, like Chester's concert last night, and I went a lot of the day having not watched it. But obviously very quick for us to even do this episode. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, you're gonna ask Kayla because I don't have the mic.
Oh, Jay doesn't have the mic, so Kayla, now it's your turn.
I just want to talk for a second. When you were talking about Stranger Things season 1, you watched the trailer. I never saw a trailer for it. So I actually found it on Netflix one night, and we were like laying in bed trying to fall asleep, and I was like trying to find a show that would help me fall asleep, and I found Stranger Things, and he had said something like, "Oh, that's a show Ryan talked about." And I think I got through like 4 episodes that night.
Yeah.
And then it was on, like the next day I finished it, and that's essentially what I did.
That's actually
this season.
I'm glad you brought this point back up, because I think this is actually something that we neglected to talk about on our preview last week. At least we haven't talked about it in a while, maybe since last year. But yeah, obviously there was a time, and it's hard to remember. There was a time when Stranger Things was, again, just supposed to be another show. And I remember having to convince people like Jay, a couple of other friends of ours. I remember having conversations like, no, this is the show.
Yeah.
And like months after the fact, like Jay said, he hadn't seen it yet. So months after, I was like trying to convince him. And I remember the argument back then being, is this the way that J.J. Abrams just imitates Spielberg in Super 8? Is that what this is? Is this a show that's just trying to capitalize on nostalgia? And that's what to the haters, I think that's what the conversation is. It's just it's a copycat show. And my point that I always made to them was like, yes, it has that kind of stuff, but at the same time, it contributes.
It has elements. It has elements of that, but I mean, you're still paying honor. It doesn't really seem. Maybe it's an homage, but it still seems original. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like in the way that you might say that it kind of imitates, sci-fi suburbia that Spielberg was popular for. It also reminds me of like X-Men. You know what I mean? Like it's not just an imitation of nostalgia is one thing. I mean, you can say that it's like a lot of things, but that doesn't really bother me. But again, the point that I made to people like Jay, the people that needed to be convinced, like, what is it about the show? It's that this show contributes just as much to the genre in general. You contribute the concept and the idea of the upside down to Stranger Things, not to anything else.
Yeah.
It has just as much to it has much of a right to be in the genre as everything else, because it's able to do that. And it's also just very accessible to me. I feel like there could have been a version of the show that just appealed to the nerds, but I think the show appeals to everyone.
Well, I think you guys are both making the same point. Essentially that it has the ability to stand on its own, and that is even more the case with this season, in my opinion. Of course, like any sort of genre type of television show, movie, I mean, shit, even music, like it's obviously going to have echoes of other things that have influenced it. Obviously, this is a show that does wear an amalgamation of its different influences on its sleeve. But this season, way more than last season. And they even sort of had some silly commentary with it. Luke made a joke about it. The meta sort of joke they made about this could have taken place at any point in time this season. The 80s were not as big of a character in the show as they were in season 1. There were certain pop culture elements here and there. Obviously, the technology, I think, played a big part in this season, because this season was so much more spread out. People were not together this season, and their communication is not like it is today. They didn't have cell phones. They had to rely on radio and SOS
and
Morse code.
You know that's something that I appreciate about storytelling in general.
Yeah.
Removing the cell phone automatically, cell phone makes a story automatically more intriguing. I think you can do a lot more without technology in that way.
But that was always one of the criticisms. I don't even know if it was a justified criticism Josh McCouga saying, "Oh, it's just remember berries now after the fact."
Yeah.
And it's just like, I didn't get that. I could see where somebody could say that with season 1. I just didn't get that with this season.
And that's the other point that I wanted to make too. We transitioned into, there was a time when I was convincing you to watch the show, and then as time goes on, you've since seen it, and then there were people that started to question, is it really as good as we thought it was? But again, here we are. Everyone has watched the show. It's arguably Netflix's biggest show. I mean, there was a fucking countdown. People were freaking out about the return of this. It was the only television show, to my knowledge, that has had a Super Bowl presence the way that it did. I mean, that's when the trailer debuted.
Legion.
Legion, that's right. Yeah. But yeah.
Shout out to Legion.
This everything about this show just screams
right
mainstream.
Yeah, and I think the last point on that I'll make before we actually get into our discussion is, and it's fascinating looking back on it now, having seen the entire season, to your point about it being one of the biggest, if not the biggest show for Netflix, and I guess just for this whole streaming model in general, I don't think Hulu doesn't follow the same type of model as Netflix, but this show is the first show I've ever seen that I've binged that was this big feeling, and it was a little overwhelming at times. Like, there were times when I was watching it, and because of obviously the intricacies of the storyline, but the cinematography, the special effects, all this stuff, it just felt like I was watching this movie that I couldn't escape from. I was like watching it like, this is almost sensory overload. You know what I mean? Like, because we turn an episode off and wait for the next week, and we can process everything.
Right.
Like a show like Game of Thrones. Imagine we've binged Game of Thrones before, and you can't do anything else but watch it. Like, that's all I wanted to do all day, all night, was just come back home and watch this show.
So what's great about this is that I sort of got this feeling that the key word here is expansive. That's just encompasses everything about it. So right away from the title, Stranger Things 2, I remember when they unveiled that it's a television show that's actually treating it like a sequel, not just a second season. And it has a blockbuster feel to it. Stranger Things 2. I mean, what other show is doing that? It's and again, like any sequel, it's expansive in any way. I mean, you can compare it to what any other show. We'll take Game of Thrones out of it, but
yeah, it's almost not fair.
Talk about The Americans, for example.
Okay.
Okay.
I have no context to that, but that's fine.
But
I'll take your word for it.
You will, though, but it's because season 1, it's like, okay, spies, Russian spies do this in America. Season 2, Russian spies are now doing this in America, and it's just like, that's one thing. But here we are, we have kids interacting with these monsters and the sci-fi feel and everything. It's different in every way. And one of my favorite comments in addition to the title, one of my favorite comments was that they were going to take a James Cameron approach to this season. And
do you think they achieved that after having seen it?
100%.
I agree.
And it was so on the nose, and I wish that I had thought of this. Like, I'm kicking myself because I can't believe I didn't come up with this. But it's as literal as season 1 has one Demigorgon,
right?
Season 2
has
2. All of the Demigorgons.
It was Alien 2. Yeah.
I don't know how someone much smarter than me probably put that together already, but I don't know how I didn't come up with that.
Well, the blueprints were laid out. It's what we say all the. I mean, I don't mean to bring this into the conversation. It's like we say all the time with with DC. It's like, just follow Marvel's plan.
Right.
But it's funny you said that about the X-Men thing too, because this season 2 felt Stranger Things 2. The ensemble cast even though they were so much apart, I just felt like, because we had already spent so much time with them in season 1, like somebody like what's his name? I'm already forgetting names with the hair.
Will,
no.
Mike, Dustin.
No, keep going.
Lucas.
No,
Steve.
keep going. Steve. I mean, like we had his journey. You know, he had this sort of comeuppance as a villain of the show, and then towards the end, he sort of turned the corner. All I did was love Steve this season, and to see him go on that journey just deeper and deeper into being maybe not necessarily a leader, but just like maybe a leader for these kids to a certain extent,
right?
Just in the sense that he's older, he's bigger, he's stronger, and more knowledgeable.
His relationship with Dustin. Oh my God, I love it.
And you hit it right on the head, Jay. Comparing on with Josh Brolin, that was sort of the Goonies role.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it is. Yeah, I mean, it is in the sense where in the Goonies they had this older brother guy who, you know, was still attached to these kids. He was still living through these kids as an, you know, not an adult, but just as an older adolescent individual, and they just followed and bid on everything they did. There were a lot of those duo type of relationships this season. Obviously, David Harbour's relationship with Eleven, and you know, even going all the way to Max and Lucas. I think everybody had these different little mini relationships that they were sort of fostering.
I think every character had their moments. Some storylines were better than others, I think.
I agree.
But
and you get that anytime you start spreading people out like that,
they all had enough to do. I think the only person that I think was actually lacking as far as just time spent was Mike, which is a fascinating thing to do when he, without question, is the main character of Stranger Things. Right,
I would say definitely in season 1,
yeah,
between him and 11,
and Stranger Things 2, he is probably there the least, and I'm wondering what the decision was. Was it because we had characters like Lucas that had so much potential? Was it because they wanted to give those characters on the back burner some opportunity to really shine, give them some growth, or it could be something as like he was filming it.
Exactly.
I don't know when that timetable was, but it could be that as well. But I mean, he also did have his moments,
right?
Because
they mattered. When he had his moments, they mattered for sure.
The thing about these kids is that Kayla talked about this as we were watching it. Like, these kids were forced to grow up so quickly, and you have one character in Will who's going through PTSD. You have someone like why did I just forget his name? Mike. Mike, who's in love with this girl and thinks that she died for him, and I mean, it's just so,
or just that she's trapped in this space and doesn't know how to get to her.
Yeah. And so they all had really great adult moments and mature moments,
right?
And I think the storyline that we particularly don't care for is everything that Dustin was doing,
right?
Because I
was curious how other people were feeling about that, because while we hadn't had this conversation until tonight, but while Kayla and I were watching the show, I brought up the fact that storyline just didn't really make a lot of sense to me.
No.
Just because, I don't think she agrees, and that's fine. I'd love to hear your take. But I didn't think that because of all the stuff that they went through in season 1, that he would be willing to take those sort of risks.
If this child, well, it's not even that. It's the fact that, and again, maybe we could debate on how adult these kids are supposed to be. Maybe he still is supposed to be a child and legitimately think he discovered a species. I think if someone who has experienced the Upside Down, experienced a friend who has telekinetic abilities, I don't think you see a creature like that and your mind instantly goes to, I found a creature from South Africa or South America, and I'm gonna your mind would immediately go to, that reminds me of the monsters in the Upside Down, stay away, not I have a new pet.
That's your opinion, though. I mean, I get it. I get it, but that's not, you know what I mean? His character, I feel like, could easily go the other way, which is he's a reckless kid and he thinks it's cool. You know what I mean? I mean, I remember catching yeah, no, there's totally an innocence. And also like all of the adults in his life have told him that he's safe. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. They've said that the Upside Down is closed. There's nothing going on. That all of the stuff is happening in Will's head. His mom's, I feel like he's kind of sheltered in a lot of ways, which
Yeah.
seems
Well, I mean, like I said, I mean, it just goes back to how much you want to debate how adult these are supposed to be, and again, I mean, that could be my fault. The fact that everyone else around him is dealing with this really adult stuff, and the fact that he isn't, maybe he is supposed to be the kid who's supposed to make quote unquote dumb mistakes in that way. But I just would assume that these characters who have some context to the supernatural, I think his mind should have gone elsewhere instead of.
I was for sure like mad at him for it, but I don't think I don't know. I think I could see like one of my stupid friends doing shit like that. Like we caught snakes all the time as kids and like took them into our house and hung out with them in little creepy cages and did risky stuff like that. Like my dad tells stories about how he caught like baby rattlesnakes when he was a kid. None of that stuff is safe, but kids are willing to do it because they are fearless.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's not necessarily like I do think they were driving a point. There was a purpose to him.
Yeah.
Dart played a role in the whole story, but God, I was so mad at him.
There's also the season tonally, I think, was kind of split in half in the way that I thought that
it was interesting that they screened these episodes in the way that they did,
right?
Because there was a significant shift, I think, between those first 6 episodes and the last 3 episodes of the season,
right?
Like they really got into the climax, and they withheld that from the critics.
The first few episodes, I mean, the first episode is just about the mystery behind Mad Max.
Yeah,
like it was just such a completely different thing than where we were in episode 8, which was aliens, you know?
Right.
So the first half in particular, there was a lot of freaks and geeks going on. There's a montage of them dressed up at Halloween, and their parents are taking pictures of them, and it felt freaks and geeks like for a long time, and it was youthful.
It did.
And that's when you had the opportunity to have Dustin make that kind of innocent.
Well, and it kind of warms your you dip your toes into that their world, and I think it makes them more interesting.
Yeah, and to be fair, like you said, they need or wanted some sense of normalcy. So maybe you're right. Maybe Dustin's mind doesn't go there because it's kind of removed from it. That's not where I was going, but it's a valid point to make.
So I think the bottom line with it is it was there. It existed, that whole thing with Dustin, and it was obviously used as a plot device to move the story along.
Yeah.
It helped get things from point A to point B. And it really is subjective in terms of how you perceive it, whether you want to focus on it or you can just accept it. Like, it's just a part of what's going on.
Right.
It also seemed like it was a way for them to split up even more. Does that make sense? So it could drive a bond closer between like Lucas and Max, and then you've got Will, who's with Mike, and Joyce, and Dustin's pretty much removed from the situation. He's just dealing with the Dart on his own. That's the whole reason he gets Steve involved. So I think it's kind of cool too, because then Steve becomes like an older brother figure for him. It doesn't really seem like where's Dustin's dad? It's just him and his mom, isn't it?
I think so. That's how I read it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no mention of him or anything.
Right.
Yeah, they haven't really explored all of the parents' backs. Like, we don't know anything about Lucas's parents at all.
I mean, he did have the most wholesome family, I feel like, though, Lucas did. So,
yeah. Oh my God, his sister.
His sister was a great character.
Spitfire.
Best character of the show.
I loved it.
You said
yes, I forgot. I forgot. I forgot what I was gonna say. Carla. Shoot. Nancy's mom, Mrs. Wheeler.
Yeah.
Oh my God. She might be my favorite character. The way that she is done with Ted.
I didn't realize how hot she was.
I was gonna ask Kayla if she thought she was
that one scene. I was like, my word. Anyways,
she's a looker.
So no, listen, real quick. We need to sort of move forward a little bit. I do want to save towards the end for any sort of negatives that we might have, because I did have a few minor negatives. To your point about them splitting up and whatnot, that was like the first moment of this season where I was like, there's sort of some echoes of last season. And of course, you're going to have some things that are reminiscent, some story plots that or some plot lines that they've already explored, like they did that last year with 11 sort of being that person that was sort of driving Lucas apart from the group and whatnot, and they had to come back together. Obviously, they were way farther apart this season. I mean, I don't think they were all four together ever in this season until maybe like the very, very end when they were in Will's house, which is sort of fascinating to think about.
No, they
all
were
5 of them.
You mean including 11?
Well, definitely 11, but even
they were together like the first 3 episodes.
Exactly, yeah, but they were apart for more than they were together.
Yes,
I think is the thing to really talk about. Let's move on to probably one of the biggest aspects of the season. I think is just how much we explored the mythology of this show, because people talk all the time about, well, you can't focus on the island. It's about the people, not the island. I get that, but the island's still pretty interesting, and they really went in depth on the Upside Down. But that's something that I didn't pick up on until we finished the show, and pretty much the last scene is that we really weren't in the Upside Down. The Upside Down came
right.
That it surfaced essentially.
Yeah.
What was your take on just how much they explored? I mean, they were in those tunnels a lot this season,
right? I mean, we spent an entire episode there with Hopper. I mean, it was very prevalent. And yeah, that was something you could easily forget. Like, you're still on Earth. You're not in the Upside Down. You're still in these channels that are underneath Hawkins and Indiana. And
but it's infecting.
Yeah,
like
it's
definitely. Just crazy.
It's like like he said, it's surfacing up. And I think that going into the show was my biggest concern.
Yeah.
Because it's like season 2, you're still dealing with the Upside Down.
It can go real wrong.
How do you do something different?
Yeah.
And it kind of shows, at least my interpretation, that the very last scene shows that there's going to be more Upside Down. We're not done with it.
Well, it's not like they destroyed it.
But at the same time, it's like,
and we still don't know
right.
exactly what it is. That's one of the smartest things I think the show has done. While still showing so much of it, they've been able to not explain it to you.
Because in a way, I mean, you could look at it like all they're doing is talking about the monsters that inhabit it.
Right.
Like, you can always have a new monster. I mean, you could look at it that way. We're still not, again, like you said, the background of the locale in general. We don't really know a whole lot about it.
Right.
So there is more to do, and I think, but you do just run the risk of recycling imagery and, recycling tired ideas.
It's interesting to me that they, even like the scientists that they talk to, have no idea what's going on with the Upside Down. They're just as in the dark as everybody else is. And it seems like the kids know more about it than anybody else. Even if they're just guessing, the analogies that they're using make more sense. And it seems to be that they're the ones that are actually getting what's happening before, all the scientists with their equipment and everything like that. So I'm interested to see.
Well, that's a very that's Spielberg is what that is. It's the fact that it's basically these kids survive based on imagination.
Yeah.
And that adults are the ones that are actually clueless. I mean, that's everything Spielberg, and
we saw that. And
so well done.
Paul Reiser's character this season, who I thought did a fantastic. Are you going to put that in my dirty clothes there? Okay, he did a fantastic job this season, and his character had a pretty interesting arc, I think. Sort of, he played the role of making amends for everything that was going on with the laboratory, and then shifting into just trying to keep all of it together, and then at the very end realizing that there was still some darkness there and that he had to sort of come back. I think that one thing that was interesting to me about his character and how he was dealing with everything was just how he was trying to apply science to so much of it, when in all actuality 11 was the one that probably had the key to it all. Let's talk about her real quick, because I think going into the season, I didn't know how much of her we were going to get. I didn't realize that we were going to have. I was legitimately surprised when she showed up and Hopper's house, and that she was just. I mean, we literally got that almost like Luke and Rey moment of that I'm sure we're going to get in The Last Jedi of picking up right where it left off.
And I thought that was beautiful.
Amazing. I cried. I literally cried in that scene.
The fact that
I never cry.
Well, my mind just instantly went to Hopper needs her.
Yes.
As a replacement.
Kayla called that last
quote
season.
unquote replacement for Sarah. And so I thought that was just beautifully done and naturally done. I mean, that's something that you could definitely have called. Yeah, I just thought that was great. And there were some really particular scenes that stand out.
Powerful scenes.
Between them.
Yes.
Particularly the one where they're just yelling at each other and things are flying through the cabin. And those scenes stood alone, and not just for them, but the entire season.
Yeah.
I mean, when I think back at some of the most pivotal scenes, I think about something like that when it doesn't have anything to do with the primary storyline. So
yeah, and I think it's sort of funny too, because I think 11 is the type of character that can definitely be overused. If she wasn't in hiding this whole season, she could have just easily been around like, okay, let's get 11 to come and do this and save these people. Oh, what's that? Dart is attacking. Let's use 11 to,
yeah.
And the way that she was utilized was very, very smart. I found those scenes in the cabin with her and Hopper very powerful because, I mean, think about it. This guy always wanted to be the father, and he didn't get a chance to be the father, but he also, because that happened and he went through this tragedy, lived a pretty tumultuous life, I would say, where he was dealing with that pain. So he was experiencing that for the first time, but she's also, we say innocent. I mean, she has no recollection or any sort of structure. Yeah. Social structure in general. So I think they were both figuring it out, and it was just such a powerful and interesting way to do it. It was almost like a Spielberg E.T.-ish sort of moment without the whimsical sort of side to it. It was just very raw, a very, very raw and powerful set of scenes.
Yeah. I think...
Kayla asked for the microphone. And
no, go ahead, because I'm about to go somewhere else, but I want you to respond to that.
I was just going to say that I thought that she did a fabulous job of portraying... I thought she did a fabulous job of portraying the angst that she was like feeling, and that like vulnerability that she just, I don't know, it was really hard to watch at times. Just how much pain you could tell that she was in, and like how lonely she was. And you also just kind of want to reach out and hug her.
Emmy-nominated actress Millie Bobby Brown.
I thought she did a great job.
She did.
Let's talk about I'm sorry, you were going to make a point.
No, I was going to ask, this isn't Millie Bobby Brown criticism here. I think that the show opens with a promise of expanding the mythology when it comes to the children that were experimented on. And you get that opening chase scene in Philadelphia, and you meet 8. I think that that wasn't fulfilling. I think what we end up getting, and I think this is, unfortunately for 11, I think this was the least interesting, the least fun thing about the season was episode 7,
right?
Which I hadn't seen yet. I just finished the 6th episode and happened to be on Twitter and saw 2 people talking about the quote unquote bad episode of Stranger Things.
Was I copied on that? Because somebody replied to me. I wasn't. Somebody. No. I swear to you, somebody responded to me and said, "Oh, I just finished it. Loved the whole thing with the exception of one episode." And I didn't know which one it was.
No, this was a conversation between a film school rejects writer and a slash film writer. And they were talking about the bad episode of Stranger Things. And I remember I instantly got angry. Like, okay, guys, like settle down, like quit freaking out. And I wanted to like defend the show without having seen what they were talking about. And of course they tell me that it's the very next one.
Right.
But so I watched it, and I didn't particularly care for it. I thought it was the least interesting part of the season. Right. And I mean, I wish that I mean, that was an opportunity to get more from 11. And you did have some nice scenes with her discovering her mother and what that was. But even that didn't feel like there was a lot of weight to it.
Right.
As far as like what it means to her in her life.
Well, I think because we know the character so well.
I just feel like she's already forgotten it.
Well, no, I think because we already know where her values lie in terms of 11, she has a passion for her friends. She misses Mike. She does love Hopper, even though she has this sort of contentious relationship with him. We always knew in the back of our mind, at least I did, that she's not just going to stay with these people,
right?
Either in Illinois or in with her mom. I just never really felt that. That episode in particular, my biggest issue with that episode is that not only were we removed from everything going on in Hawkins, which you can do that. I think it's a risk anytime somebody does something like that when you just completely leave your storyline that you're spending so much time with. And it sort of just served, the only purpose it served for me was just sort of saying, oh, look how much you really do miss your friends, one, and two, utilizing it as like a Professor Xavier sort of, or even like a Magneto episode.
My mind instantly went to First Class.
A Magneto type of episode where not only are you learning how to use your powers, you're also sort of learning how to use them and like your morality and all of that. And that's interesting. It's just, and I don't have anything technically wrong with the episode. I think it just seemed very out of place.
I think it was, it's not, I don't have a problem with the risk of doing it. Yeah. I have a problem with, I just didn't care for the story. I didn't like I didn't get anything from the characters. I thought they were annoying, and again, it ended up kind of being an empty promise. It's a weird thing to start the season this way, and you think that this is going to be something that builds along the season, and it ends up being one episode that is the least interesting of the entire series. I think the execution of it feels like it was filler. It just feels like this is the part where if Stranger Things was a network drama, we would have this episode here. And I didn't like that. Whereas like even a show like The Walking Dead took the opportunity to revisit, like I think they did 1 or 2 episodes strictly about the governor's storyline. And like I thought that was done well compared to everything else. But this one in particular, purely on execution, is just the part that I did not care for.
It seems like Kali will come into play later on.
I hope so. I mean, they still have that.
I really do think it seems like they have a really, really strong bond. The fact that after 11 left, Kali was like unconsolable for a moment and couldn't use her powers anymore. And like the fact that when she got there, she said she felt whole again. And maybe it was all a manipulation, but it doesn't seem to be that way. And I also think that leaves them, that it gives them room to come back to her later on. It wasn't an empty promise, I don't think. I think it's just maybe like we're going to tuck you away and put you in our pocket for a moment.
The empty promise is just how it started the whole season, but it ended up being something that was barely even. That's where I'm going. But it could have been the gateway to like an Orphan Black scenario. Like she could have been like, it could have been the Clone Club all over again. It could have been really fascinating, but and maybe they go to it again in season 3, but then again, they run that risk because I don't know if people are responding to it. And if that ends up being, a huge part of season 3, I mean, that could be a little worrisome.
Well, and it's interesting too, because just because of the way the season ended, they're still dangling that carrot of the Upside Down still being an apparent issue and problem. And I personally, I think they only have maybe one season of that left in them for me personally to really explore before. I like the idea of exploring other numbers, other people like 11. I think
I'm glad she had a different power.
Absolutely. And
she could have been another.
I think that's fascinating. I do think a Stranger Things season can exist without the without the Upside Down. Still feel like Stranger Things because there are supernatural things going on, and I think psychic abilities and whatnot do play into that. I would love to see people with psychic abilities be the threat of a particular season, to where maybe people have to go up against each other, and we can get a brand new X-Men season.
It seems like the Upside Down is intrinsically like connected to their psychic abilities, though. The whole reason that it was the gap was opened was because 11 was using her abilities to communicate, or not really communicate, but to spy on the Russians. Correct? Do you all remember this from season 1?
That's why they were exploring her powers so that they could use them to spy on people.
I misheard you.
But
I thought you were saying that there was truth to her being a Russian spy, which is what they thought.
She was using her powers to. They were trying to get her to spy on people and communicate with people and whatnot. And I think the interesting thing with that is that she can see into other maybe quote unquote dimensions by going. That's one thing that I think was sort of fleshed out in this season that I just didn't pick up on it on season one, is that not only can she like use her powers to like manipulate things and people and throw things across the room, but that she does have this ability, and I guess so did 8, where she could tap into this sort of in between and actually communicate with people.
It felt like a non-sensory type thing. Like if she can shut out everything in the outside world, she can channel those visions that she ends up having.
But the creature it existed inside of that, all the black space. It was chittering around in there, and Papa, I can't remember his name.
Papa. Matthew Modine's character.
Told her to reach out and communicate with it, and because she communicated with it, that's when the gash formed.
Right.
I don't know.
She just gave up.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's obviously more to be explored. And that's what's so great about this show, is that it can tell a singular story while still leaving so many interesting threads and whatnot. I think we probably need to wrap up here soon.
I feel like we barely done anything. We got to talk
for almost an hour about it.
We got to talk about Will.
Oh yeah, okay. That was one of my negatives.
Are you serious? I thought you were joking.
No, I legitimately. I mean, my issue with Will, I think the actor did a really, really good job, and I think the way he was utilized was interesting. It just, I was sort of rolled my eyes at the fact that it was another season where we had to save Will. That was sort of, and that's a super silly thing, as silly as our opinion of like, how dare Dustin raise this tadpole? Like, it's just something throughout the entire season that I was kind of like, all right.
I think that
you could have easily just had an impending threat on.
I think that was maybe the only thing we knew that we were going to do in season 2, based on how season 1 ended.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I get that.
I mean, that's immediately where my mind was. So I just always expected that to have some weight to this season.
He's a plot device.
But I don't agree with that.
I mean, he is. He legitimately is.
I mean, okay, then in the way that everyone is a plot device, he is a plot device.
But I mean, come on. He is the quintessential plot device.
The
show, both seasons have revolved around him.
So, for one, it was different enough in the way. For one, I just assumed it was always going to be a Will-centric season. For one, it's one thing to have a Will-centric season in season 1 when he wasn't even around.
Right.
It felt completely new to me, even though it was Save Will Volume 2. It felt completely different because he was actually there, and he was hanging out with these characters. We were finally seeing the good and the bad of all of these relationships. And not only did we get such a strong performance, but you can throw in the term plot device here, but I mean, he was also our doorway into so much the interesting, the hive mind stuff and the possessive stuff. And he was sort of,
I liked how he was utilized. I don't want that to be confused. Of course, you never know how I feel about things. I enjoyed how he was utilized. They did it well. It's just sort of it's just the fact that it existed.
And I thought that he stole the show, and he was the sort of the character that I fell in love with. I think that
we spent so much time with him.
We did. And I think that this is something that's fascinating to me, is because like it felt like it was like to the point where it felt like he was my own kid.
Yeah.
In the way that I was so worried about him.
Do you like that?
And again, if you want to make the comparison to Super 8, I think the value that that movie has with me is that it makes me just feel like a kid again, seeing those kids interact. But having this show deal with this kid who's dealing with the PTSD and the fact that his performance was so strong, it felt like I needed to hold him and make him feel better. Like, I thought he did such a great job. I mean, they all do a great job, but I thought he was fantastic. And maybe it was because we didn't get enough of him in season 1 that I was just sort of blown away by everything Will. And I thought everything around him was very strong, including what Joyce was able to do. Because I think she was sort of labeled as just like the whiner and the crier in season 1. I didn't think she did a lot of that here, but I didn't see it that way this time around. The Bob and what Jonathan was able to do. I mean, it still just all felt different and special to me.
Other minor nitpick echoes from season 1 that I had, laying out things around the Byers households is another thing that I thought that's just
absolutely fair.
It was just funny because like at the time I was like wondering to myself, I was like, what could I just absolutely nitpick the shit out of this about? And that was one of the things, just the echoes from season 1.
Bob the Brain. I just want to take a moment and honor that character. Sean Astin is perfect.
I thought he was going to end up being a spy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I legitimately did think he was fantastic.
No, he did a great job. Yeah, he did a great job. No, I thought there was going to be a twist where he ended up being a spy from the lab.
That scene where it just clicks, Will's map clicks to him is so perfect. And like, his character, I immediately liked him, and I definitely am really bummed that he is not around anymore. I did feel like his death was a little like frustrating for me.
Yeah, I think the second to last episode might have been my favorite episode in the entire season. It legitimately, you want to talk about James Cameron, it felt like Alien 2 escape throughout this entire thing. It was action packed. I mean, you had fucking Hopper with a rifle. Like, it was awesome. You had was that the episode with 11? Was that the second to last episode?
11 comes in at the house. That's the reveal.
That's right.
Of 11 showing up.
The very, very end. Yeah, you had that whole scenario as well. Just everything about that episode, and it was so singular in the sense where it really only took place in 2 locations. It took place in the house at the end and in the hospital.
Yeah,
at that one point as well. Definitely my favorite episode.
Easily.
Yeah.
I've seen it twice. I watched it by myself, and then when I got here, you all hadn't seen it yet. Watched it again, and it was just as great. And I mean, the scene where again, I watched it not too long ago, but both times I teared up in the scene where they have Will in the shed and they're recounting memories to see if they can try to bring him out. And yeah, that was a really powerful scene too.
Let's talk about the production value of this show. I think from season 1 to season 2, obviously season 1 they didn't know what they had on their hands. We were kind of wondering not just how bigger the show would be just expanding, but how bigger it would feel, how bigger it would look, how much bigger it would look.
How bigger
it would look. I asked you this question just because I was genuinely interested. You know, you spoke recently. Sorry, I don't know why I can't talk. You spoke recently about the CGI of Spider-Man Homecoming, watching it on the screen versus watching it at home. You could really tell some imperfections with it. How do we feel about the CGI of these creatures, these demo dogs? What are they called? Demodogs. Raccoon.
Totally acceptable.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think about Dart and the fact that because in season 1 they did a lot of hiding with Demogorgon in the nighttime
shadows,
and things like that. But
you didn't really get to see him until the last episode,
right? And but I mean, they had those scenes with Dart eating the food outside, and like I thought all of that was totally acceptable. And
eating the cat
as well.
Justice for Muse.
Yeah,
Mew.
I mean, is it the greatest? No, but it's acceptable. It's enough for me to buy it.
You don't see this type of stuff like that again. That second to last episode, the dogs running through the hallways and
right.
chasing after people. You don't see that type of stuff on
That
TV.
reminded
that often.
me a lot of Attack the Block too. That was
Oh, yeah? You like
Aliens that Attack the Block is what that made me think of.
John Boyega.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else do we have to cover before we wrap this up?
Steve was a standout. I thought Nancy was fantastic. I thought she did a great job too. I'm most impressed with the Byers. We need to talk about Mad Max and her brother. That's
for sure.
That's the part that we haven't touched on.
Legitimate question with these two. I feel like I like the addition of these characters because I think they were entertaining, especially the brother, that scene with what's his name, with Will's mom. Not Will's mom. Mike's mom. I feel like they were introduced, but I don't know if they even needed to be in this show.
No.
At all.
No.
Because we never really got any sort of exploration of the characters. A little bit in the last, I think, couple episodes, we sort of got to see their family life a little bit. I mean, that was the first time we even saw their parents. It was like the second to last episode, I think.
Right.
And I don't know what their place was. Maybe they'll be explored more in the next season, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit off-putting in the finale, spending so much time like dealing with her brother as the threat and that whole fight scene.
Yeah, did that even have to happen at the end of the day?
I didn't have a problem with it because, again, episode 8 was so dark, and the fact that episode 9 took sort of the lighter turn, it's, in my opinion, what makes great endings is when you kind of revisit the beginning. So the fact that tonally it kind of moved back and they were all kind of together again and it was a little bit lighter, I was fine with it, but it is awkward, I think, to spend so much time like now the brother is the threat for a minute, and it was weird. And I think that all just kind of goes back to the fact that if they maybe kind of felt out of place the entire time,
could be
like the fact that they made it a point to this girl moved from California, but they could have just as easily just had it been a girl in their class the whole time.
They kind of avoided the predictable aspect of it because you and I both thought that his character was going to take a turn, and maybe have some sort of redeeming quality about him, but he never really did. He never had a moment where he came and saved the day or did something that was courageous or heroic.
I just don't know, especially now that 11 is back. I just don't know what else are you gonna do with that. So like, I don't think
what threat could he possibly have?
I don't know. I don't know how right now, and obviously this is an ignorant statement. I don't know how those two characters have a place in season 3, but I think then we might look back at season 2 and just been like, yeah, that was really weird to include those characters.
At the beginning of season 1, we didn't like Steve Harrington either. He was a bully too.
This isn't about not liking the character.
But it could easily change with next season. I really don't see the problem with their characters. I liked Max. I thought she was like a Spitfire and another, I don't know, I think she was a nice addition and a good female character as like a foil for Lucas too.
I mean, yeah, she was a love interest for Lucas, but I just don't think they amounted to much because
I don't think
what did she do to contribute to the finale?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a commentary on their characters. I actually enjoyed their characters quite a bit. I just don't know what their story arc had to do with with a lot. Like,
and it's not about him being despicable either. When, like you said, Steve wasn't likable in the first season. But
every time he was on screen, I actually was entertained by him being on screen. I significantly enjoyed him. It's just he did a great job. It's legitimately their place in the entire story. But I do think you're right. There's obviously elements more so with Max than with him, but Max obviously played a big role in 11 and Mike when she went to visit him and all that stuff.
It was also just a really interesting.
Actually,
the fact that they subtly introduced like the racism of that character, I thought was fascinating because that's the last thing I expected this show to cover.
Right. But it's definitely a product of the time.
And then you get into the language that is used by him and his family. His father, played by Frank Forty and Will Chase. That's such a interesting. I'm not even saying good or bad. I just kind of thought that was very unique to the show to do that.
Right. One other thing that I think Max did that I'm just thinking about now is that she played an interesting role in this show to showcase how these kids are being forced to grow up and mature a little bit, dealing with girls, dealing with crushes, multiple guys, dealing with that. I mean, you know, that's something they might not have been that interested in the first season, but obviously they're getting older, and just like with anything, and they kind of address certain elements of that throughout the entire season, like when Luke took his He-Man back and his sister was like, "You're still playing with toys? Aren't you too old for that?" I remember having that thought. Like, I remember going to school one day and thinking, like, am I too old to be playing with toys?
What? Why did I bring an action figure? Why is there one in my backpack?
Yeah, I think I had to tell my mom, like, to not buy me toys for Christmas anymore. And then in the back of my mind, I was like, I kind of still want them though. Yeah. What else do we have to cover before we wrap this up?
I don't know. I think that's it. I think that, again, going back to that word expansive, I think that for the most part, it just completely knocked it out of the park as far as making this one of the biggest shows that I've ever seen in general.
Agreed.
Which, again, is just kind of fascinating. This show just came out of nowhere and became the phenomenon that it is.
TV this year.
That first episode feels like a movie. The way it legitimately feels like a Stranger Things 2, the movie. Just the way that it's written, the way that it looks, how those characters come back, just all of it. The presentation was just phenomenal.
TV this year. I mean, I don't know how you have a show like this and a season like this, a season like Game of Thrones, which we both, all three of us, really, really enjoyed. I mean, some of the other amazing shows this year that I'm forgetting, Legion was fantastic. I mean, this has just been such a great year for television.
This season, and I know that you're going to think, okay, this wasn't even a comparison to begin with, but I think it's hilarious how this makes The Defenders the most forgettable thing.
I thought that in that sort of last scene where they descended down into, and they were having like this shootout, or Hopper was shooting at those dogs crawling on the wall, I thought to myself, how has Stranger Things 2 eclipsed a Disney Marvel TV show in terms of how, like,
it's forgettable.
Why can't you? Yeah, why can't the dogs are better villains than any Marvel? Well, with maybe the exception of Jessica Jones. What's that villain's name? Jessica Jones.
The Purple Man.
Yeah, what's his name? Kilgrave. Yeah, can't remember. Sorry. Let's grade this thing. What are you going to give this?
A.
Me too.
Very strong.
Yeah, me too.
Strong. Top 5 easily this year.
Yeah, definitely. Very strong A. I think the only thing keeping it out of the A+ level is honestly just the fact that to get an A+ for me in TV, like, you got to something, I mean, I'm talking mind-blowing stuff. This met every single expectation that I had. I don't know if it necessarily exceeded anything just because of how strong season 1 was, but I think
this also just proves, you started the conversation talking about sort of the binge. I think this proves that this is just a perfect amount.
Yeah.
And this is one extra episode.
We talked about that too. Like, we were surprised that it wasn't 12 or 13 episodes.
I mean, even at 9 episodes, it feels like enough.
I agree.
And it was. I mean,
other than I was bummed that I don't have anything to watch now, but I mean, that's the beauty of
we have Mr. Robot to focus on.
And Mr. Robot's been great. Although I did hear that there was something about this next episode that might bum me out. But
no.
Anyways, Kayla, what grade do you give this show?
I give it an A+, mainly just for the fucking reason that both of you have literally watched multiple episodes twice already. And, like, it hasn't been unenjoyable. I think if you can watch it 2 times in a row and be, like, still catching things. This is great because
she's playing the role of all the people that will call us out for having done this. So it makes sense.
I think you guys are, like, heavily critical of stuff and you just nitpick a lot.
Did we do a lot of nitpicking here?
Kayla has literally embodied the YouTube comment person that says, an A? Not an A.
How dare you give Stranger Things a fucking A?
No, listen. Here's No, here's my thing with A plus stuff, and I say it all the time with music and with movies as well as TV. The A plus level range. I mean, A plus is perfect. A plus is perfect, and it was an incredible show. But A plus also represents to me.
Did you hear Jay thought that Will was just a plot device? Of course, he's giving it an A.
I gave it an A. What do you want? It might even be my number 1 or 2 favorite show of the year.
Yeah,
Like between this.
Oh my God. First of all,
I can't hear
there's
you.
no mic.
a word in edgewise.
You might as well be Dolly.
Yeah. All right.
Can't hear you.
So I don't know. This will be the last. This is the last segment, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we should tell people where to find us. Where do they find you?
Okay, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell, and I want more people to get. I know that we have a ton of podcast listeners that might not be as involved with us on Facebook or on YouTube. But if you're a listener of the Sight and Sound podcast and you haven't really interacted with Jay and I, come join our Facebook group. The link is down below. All you have to do is know our names, and that is your key into the Facebook group. And come hang out with us. I mean, we're always talking about TV, movies, and music. So we'd love to have you. We want the group to expand. I think we're about at 150 friends right now. So yeah, I invite anyone to do that if you have not already. Come hang out.
For sure. YouTube channel. Lots of content over there. Hit the subscribe button. You can find me on social media at Jaye Williams, J to the A, the Y to the E. On Twitter and Instagram, it's the same for both. At Sight Sound, everywhere else. I just realized that, I lost my debit card a while back.
Yeah.
I forgot to update our Podbean payment info. You know what else I forgot to update? Squarespace. And I need to do that because people need to buy our t-shirts.
You use Squarespace to buy the domain?
Yeah. It's where the domain is being hosted from. sightsoundpod.com, where you can buy our t-shirts. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, you can go to that website.
Interesting.
And buy the merchandise. But yeah, that's pretty much all we got. Ryan, you got anything else? All right, we love you. Goodbye.